This is the Moshpit Backstage podcast for punk, metal and rock interviews and segments.
G'day, this is Jed from Départe, and you're listening to the Moshpit on Sin.
Jed is the bassist for Tasmanian metal band Départe. They released their debut album, Failure Subside, and is now touring Australia, playing at the Bendigo Hotel on the 19th of November. Jed, thank you so much for joining me.
A pleasure. Pleasure to be here.
First off, tell me a little bit about the sound of the band, because it's a really interesting approach, and I think kind of something you could almost call unique in a way.
Well, thank you very much. Look, I suppose it's starting at the beginning. We were originally under the moniker of Uranus, which was a lot more focused in on, I suppose, I wouldn't even call it traditional black metal, but a lot more towards your black metal stylings. After a while, the natural writing process, the addition of a few members, the loss of like the corpse paint aesthetic and a few other things, the sound just sort of essentially naturally evolved through all of our influences. And it just started to draw from different places, and I suppose, in the end of the day, it just like naturally occurred. So, was there a conscientious effort to make it sound unique? I suppose no, definitely not. But I mean, we're absolutely thrilled with the result. So.
That was actually what I was going to ask about. There was no catalyst for the change. It was kind of just natural sort of progression.
Yeah, I mean, there was never a point in time where we'd sat down and gone, right, we definitely need to change the sound this direction. I mean, there was a conscientious decision to change aesthetic in the form of, like I mentioned before, about we did used to wear corpse paint when we first started, and then when the music evolved to what it has become, it just didn't make sense. So there was a conscious decision to drop that. But apart from that, Sam and Mick are the main songwriters, and realistically, there was never a point in time where they've sat down and directed it. It's more just been like a natural flow of idea.
Interesting. Now, what about the origin of the name?
Départe, not a huge elongated story there. Essentially, it's grabbed from the Rosetta song by the same name.
You released your demo back in 2014, which garnered a lot of attention. I was kind of interested because listening to the demo, it's of such great quality, like in terms of songwriting and even recording. I kind of would expect something like that to be released as an EP. Is there a meaningful distinction, and why call it a demo?
Well, I suppose the main production levels of it, essentially it was all just recorded at Sam's house. Everything. The drums on that particular demo were, we didn't get the chance to do full studio drums for that one. So essentially, and the reason behind the demo more than anything else, we were waiting on doing more towards an album release. But at that stage, we were fortunate enough to be offered some dates supporting Ulcerate through Europe in late 2014. So the demo was cobbled together very quickly in order for us to essentially have a resume over there, to be able to hand it out to record labels, et cetera, and for us to have a little bit of product. So it was something that, although we were we were proud of the content, we definitely thought that we could be able to step up the production values and the aesthetics surrounding it. So
now let's speak about stepping it up. The process for this album, talk a little bit about it. I imagine it was a little bit different to what you've described for the demo.
Not entirely, I suppose. Generally speaking, what will happen, I suppose, as far as the recording process was concerned, we've tracked all the guitars down at Sam's house again, and we reamped them at a later stage. But essentially, for the most part, it was us sitting in a very comfortable environment like we always used to, and just bashing out the tracks pretty much. Drums were recorded in a much bigger, more advanced, live environment at Red Planet Studios down here with the help of Nick White. So, which we think have just turned turned out fantastic. So essentially, for the most part, though, most of the tracking was still done via a home studio.
Random question. The only reason I ask is I talked to another band, I think it was a week or two ago, and they just mentioned that they did the drums first. Why the guitar first? Just out of interest.
It was more due to scheduling, more than anything else. At that time, myself included, and a few of the other guys were away on holidays and various work commitments. Just couldn't. It was the best way that we could figure to do it. We're also used to now, after a long time doing it, we're also used to just monitoring ourselves via a click track as well, and some dummy guitars. So, at least for me personally, that's generally how I hear a lot of the songs now. So, it was just easy enough. It was just the easiest and most time efficient way that we could figure out to do it. I think, given time again, potentially we'd go the other way. But in saying that, there was nothing wrong with the product that we've come up with. So I suppose it's just going to be one of those decisions. It's going to be a scheduling thing more than anything else, I think. What's
the inspiration behind the title? I was curious if it was at all related to Inverloch's Dusk's Subside.
No, I mean, great band, but no. Essentially, there is a reference to Failure Subside within the lyrics. But I mean, I suppose it does relate in a general way of speaking to the broad concept of the album, which essentially would be, I suppose, like the fall and the rise through, I suppose, darkness, would be the best way to describe it. Darkness, depression, anxiety, grief, a lot of those different negative emotions, and it's just the going down and the coming up and overcoming them. So Failure Subside can be taken in a lot of different ways like that.
In terms of, this is kind of very difficult questions in a lot of ways, because there are four of you and Mitch previously as well, but could you talk about some of the influences, musically and otherwise, that have gone into the band?
Sure. Look, it is, I suppose it's an everything and a nothing sort of question as well. I mean, there's definitely bands that all of us like, and I suppose, inversely, there are bands that all of us dislike as well. But look, everyone's fairly different. I mean, there's obviously some common ground, but influences-wise, there's a lot of different things going into it. I mean, it's a very open-ended question. Yeah, it's difficult to answer. Yeah.
You've received a lot of. It was something fascinating. I don't think I've ever seen this before, where a band was compared so thoroughly to another band, especially ones which are geographically so close, and in terms of so close in terms of release schedules. New Zealand's Ulcerate. How do you feel about that? It was really interesting, the amount of references I saw in that. It actually has been quite interesting for us. I mean, look, we're really good mates with them. They've given us opportunities that we can own, we're eternally grateful for. And even though they're garnishing a lot more attention over the course of the last couple of years, one of the most underrated bands in heavy metal today. Just an incredible musicians, and fantastic guys. I suppose the comparison's interesting in the fact that I'd be lying to say that there wasn't an influence. However, when we listen back on it, I can see a vague comparison, but I mean, I can't really see. I suppose it's not necessarily here's Australia's version of them. You know what I mean? It's flattering to be to hold such great sort of company as far as that's concerned. But it's a very interesting comparison, at least for us. I feel kind of the same way. There's definitely, in the way a number of bands can be compared, but there's definitely a kind of bizarre thing to it where it's not quite as similar as you would really need to be making so many references.
Well, that's it. I mean, first, I can understand maybe the atmosphere, I suppose, is similar. But I mean, if you're talking about if you're talking about structures of the songs, and if you're talking about dissonance, and if you're talking about especially lyrical content structures, all these different types of things as well. There's a lot of difference there. But again, like I said, to be compared with one of the the way that we see it, one of the better bands in the world today to be compared against is just humbling. So, while we may not agree completely sonically on the comparison, we definitely, we do definitely appreciate the comment.
In terms of bands, because you get some bands who have a musical approach, have a lyrical approach, or all different things, the themes running through. What has taken your band down the particular route that you've taken? Very much focus on sort of very kind of, and correct me if I'm at all voicing this
Sure.
in a way that's not really accurate, but it's very much a kind of darkness in a certain sense, negativity, but not quite a nihilistic kind of thing. Where's that approach kind of come from?
I think speaking somewhat. I mean, I do a couple of backing vocals as a live thing, and when me and Sam, who's obviously doing the main vocals, we've spoken a lot about this as well. And I think probably the word more than anything is, at least on a personal level for us, is very much the whole thing's very cathartic. I suppose it feels yes, the darkness is definitely there, and I feel like it's something that at least is resonates with a lot of people as well. Like we've had certain comments where people are like, "Oh, look, I don't know what to really do at your shows because it's not a good time. Like it's quite confronting, and I think sometimes people people have repressed a lot of those feelings, so it's quite interesting." As far as gravitating towards that, I'm just not entirely sure. I mean, I think it's we all just like heavy stuff, and it's dark and it's brooding and it's intense. So I think that's pretty much I suppose subconsciously we're probably writing the music that we'd like to hear. But again, like I said, speaking as someone who's not one of the major songwriters as well, I can only form my opinion on what I know. But for me, at least, it's a lot about catharsis, and it's a lot about writing what we want to hear, and it's a lot about gauging a reaction on that. So,
speaking of gigs, you sort of engaged in it partly now. Australian tour, I believe it's your first, but have you done any sort of major touring supporting other acts up till now?
I suppose no. Short answer, no. We've actually done a couple of shows before, and a few weekenders and things like that. But as far as Australia wide and as far as multiple dates, then no, this would be the biggest one we've undertaken. The tour we did overseas with Ulcerate in 2014 was 24 dates straight. That was in support of Ulcerate, Wormed, and a few others as well, Geigen. And that was a massive learning curve for us, a massive experience for us. So Solace of Requiem is the other one. I should really mention that. So that was a great experience for us. We've toured with Ulcerate and a couple of others across Australia before, but again, like I said, weekends, long weekends, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I could go on about the other ones, but essentially, so we're really excited. It's been great. Really having a great time as well. So. Yeah, really, it's always just great, just flying around, and especially playing in a lot of places that we're used to, and just going back, I suppose, coming home, or this time none of us have played within this band in Adelaide or WA, so we're able to go there this time, so which is really exciting as well.
Do you find it at all difficult to replicate the songs live? Because, I mean, a lot of bands, they've got a certain amount of technicality, and there's obviously a difficulty playing, but, experienced musicians, all that. But there's a certain kind of thing in your music, and a number of other bands, that kind of trailing off that atmosphere. Do you find that at all difficult to replicate?
I suppose as an idea and as a concept, it's definitely difficult. However, we've definitely knuckled down, and we've spent the time to really hone in on what exactly we need to sound like. Like the boys have modelled all their pedal boards to basically get the exact guitar tones what we're getting on the album, they can get them through essentially any head that they're playing through. You know? So with that, the atmospherics we're obviously playing via a backing track. We are taking our own personal sound goal with on a lot of these headline shows. So essentially, given obviously some things that we can't affect, like number of people in the room and the size and shape of the room or anything like that, but taking that out of the equation. The feedback, and we feel like we're definitely creating the right type of atmosphere, or at least doing the album justice.
You'll be playing next year at Direct Underground Fest. How'd you get involved in that?
Well, I suppose for the first instance, we've known Dave, obviously from Psychroptic fame. We've known him for years, and Sam, our vocalist, he does some graphic design work as well. So he's been working with Dave with numerous projects within directoring for years now. And I suppose, as far as I'm aware, essentially when the lineup started to come together, our name was just mentioned because I suppose, stylistically, we suit.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a matter of basically, Dave working out the finer details. So
I want to talk a little bit about you, because I find it really good to get people's sort of personal perspective on themselves.
Sure.
Talented musicians. When did you first get into music?
The earliest memories are very, very early, 5 or 6, just mucking around a piano. I believe there was a piano recital in there somewhat. But I suppose as far as general music is concerned, my old man used to play guitar, and used to sit around and listen to him. And that was my major introduction to it. Then when I was old enough when I was older, probably 10 or 11 or something like that, I started to pick up a guitar for myself and started getting lessons and sort of just went from there pretty much.
Cool.
Been playing from, a while now. Yeah.
How'd you get into metal, specifically?
Weirdly enough, I think it was more an active rebellion more than anything else. I think it was because I think a lot of the time they were just like, okay, cool, well, you can listen to pretty much whatever, but maybe don't stray too far into this. I'm like, well, that's exactly what I want to listen to now. It's forbidden. And it's something that I, quote unquote, shouldn't be doing. So I think that's essentially why. But but I could have listened to it and then not got into it as well. So I think, I don't know, I suppose there's an outside, I suppose everything, the same reasons why anyone else likes it, I suppose it's there is a lot of passion behind it. It's still, regardless of how popular it gets, it is still outsider, which I like. And look, it's fantastic. I can't imagine. I do try and listen to a lot of other things, but realistically, in my heart, that's where my heart is. But that's what I listen to.
Last question. You've been supportive of White Ribbon, including donating your fee and merch income of a festival you played. Would you like to talk a little bit about the cause and why it's important to the band?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, essentially, it came about from a discussion that me and a few of the other guys had been having. Without going into too much detail, we find that within society in generalities, but especially with sort of smaller knit groups such as the metal and the hardcore and the punk societies and stuff like that. There tends to be, I feel like there's not enough being said. I feel like there's probably people who are inadvertently maybe suffering in silence, and they're not able to seek out for fear of retribution or or isolation from the community or ramifications from something. And we feel like this is one way where we can go, we've got your back. It was really important for us not to, I suppose, if you go up and demand certain things from survivors or anything like that, it's essentially the same thing. It's like they don't need any more people telling them what to do or demanding what they shouldn't do. So we feel like this is the best way to be able to go about it, with going, look, we stand with you, whatever you need. White Ribbon just seemed to be the appropriate choice for us. No more, no less than that. And we feel like at the end of the day, whatever comes out of this, it's going to be positive. Like if someone starts a conversation, if someone asks, and this is the thing, if we can get a little bit of money towards a charity, so yeah, at the end of the day, we figured it was a no-brainer, and that's what we should do. We've all, I suppose, realistically, everyone, not just including the band, but just I'd say most people know someone who's been either affected directly or indirectly with some sort of domestic abuse/violence. So I feel like we can, well, hopefully it'll start a catalyst and we can make a bit of a difference with it.
Jed, bassist for Départe, debut album was released a little while ago, Failure to Subside, and they'll be touring Australia and playing at the Bendigo Hotel on the 19th of November. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much. Cheers, pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Moshpit Backstage podcast. You can subscribe to us on iTunes and Omni. To find out more about the show, go to www.syn.org.au/moshpit. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/moshpitonsin and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at moshpitsin. The regular Moshpit radio show broadcasts punk, rock and metal tunes and interviews every Thursday nights on SYN 9.7 on FM and digital radios. Listeners outside of Melbourne, Australia can stream SYN 9.7 online at www.syn.org.au. Thanks to Vintage Ruin for the music.
Hi, this is Tomato from Flashgun Apocalypse.
Hi, I'm Enid from Girls School.
I am Phoebe Pinnock from Heaven the Axe.
Hey, this is Gary Oldmead of the Misfits.
Hey, this is Kat Sproul from Horizon's Edge, and you're listening to the Moshpit on SYN FM.
Hi, this is Einar from Leopard.
Hi, I'm Virginia Lilly from the band Lily.
This is Raul from 1349.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Ali from Zebrahead.
Hey, everybody, this is Charlie Benante with Anthrax, and you are listening to the Moshpit on SYN.